Oh yeah.
I was walking in, it's like, I have a shadow.
Yeah.
I was seeing,
Wow.
and
Haven't
that
seen that
seemed
for a
like nice,
while.
perfectly round red sun.
Yeah.
So you got, yeah.
It was really red. Does he need to sign in?
I think we do have him sign in. Yep.
I was walking in, like, I have a shadow.
Yeah.
I was seeing,
Wow.
and that
Haven't seen that for a
nice,
while.
perfectly round red sun.
Yeah.
We're live streaming, just so you know.
Yeah.
You'll be internet famous. You don't have to be on
Do I
camera.
need to
No.
stand somewhere, or they can?
If you stand there, this mic will pick you up.
Oh,
You'll be okay.
here's good enough.
That is fine, just like you normally do. And I will be honest with you, I haven't had a chance to look through it yet.
Oh, there's yeah, no, it's the way I like it.
Yep. Marcy does a great job.
Yeah, she does. Okay.
You know, 4 of the 5 are. I haven't heard from the 5th one.
Got my hair where the sun's at.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th one's been on my last few meetings, so I think we'll probably go for it.
see that the STARS report's out today?
Yeah, I would like to talk to you about it. I
Okay.
worked on that this afternoon.
Okay.
For reconciliation. Jackie. So, here's your. So, I've got a difference on two. One of them, I can identify.
Okay.
I don't. This report.
This is all new for this year. It's the first time I've seen
Yeah,
this type of.
They changed it.
Yeah.
It's not the beginning. It's just, she has to order like a year out. So, this is the report that she made for me at the end of May that showed our beginning balance of this. The 800 to the DOT fresh that so we can use some of our commodity names to buy it.
Okay.
So it's still commodity. And so then this was the available balance.
Right.
So I took this amount, pulled it out of it, plus it, and that's what it. But when you look at what they have on here. I added up all the buttons, all of the lunch.
Yeah, I tried out the draft. It didn't have to be on it.
Yeah, but it's in the commodity.
Okay, so what is the commodity?
So this adds up to like 7,000.
Okay.
I tried to like maybe tie it into one of these.
Okay.
And then the other one is a stupid grant.
Because there was another one.
Block grant for prevention and treatment.
Because this wasn't on the draft.
So that you can see here, these two payments. 1,100.
You have already that you can see. There's obviously it's not missing no book.
So, no, these ones, it's a lot. For this grant that we pitched on, so I deposited into that.
Well, we don't talk about it. So that's totally there. No reason to change finances.
Okay.
So
So, and then one other thing. Remember, I did that journal entry and I did, when you
Yeah.
$100 from the lunch expenses from the lunch over to that federal. Well, then by middle of August, in August, they come out and say, hey, 3,600. And you have to have expended it to March something and May 30 something. So then, yeah, so then what I did, in order, and you have to put it in 1790. So I went in this fiscal year and
okay.
back.
Because that's what you need. That also.
Yeah, and then I request the funds. So
I think there's going to be some more.
I'm sure there's going to be more of
Stuff.
that.
Well, they're coming out with new programs and they don't really use them until after.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm just gonna give you a heads up, so
Yeah,
you're gonna see that in this fiscal year.
Yeah. That caused, I won't, that kind of hit I believe that's what I call it, I didn't know, so. Because my financials are.
Well, I tied into your financial,
Okay.
and so then I did the journal entry and the, and that's.
So it's just moving, yeah, it's one month.
Yeah, so it'll all work out. It's just-
It is nice, and it's exciting.
Oh, yeah. And you second the screen for that.
Mr. T,
Okay, all right, well, don't call me off.
are we wearing these things during the meeting?
I think if we can get 6 feet of distance like kids, I think we're
I just
okay.
didn't know if anything had changed
No.
since last time. Hey, I'm gonna have to amend the agenda
Yeah.
to add, because those bylaw changes, ISBA is considering there's 2 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they need co-sponsors, and they need it by October 1st.
Okay, and so that's an action item.
Action item. But
So-
it's okay, I read the,
We need to do it before, we need to have it amended, or we need to have an amended agenda before 5:30, right?
no,
Okay.
it's too late for that, but we can add it with, based on, emergency, you didn't know that existed before that time. And it's okay, so there's 2 provisions in the deal.
Yeah.
One, you can add it and just talk about it, that's no big deal, but you have to have a motion to say it's like
Declare it an
emergency kind of thing,
Okay.
if you're gonna vote on it.
And you have to give a reason.
Yeah. So I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I like. I tried to tackle it last spring and then there.
Marcy, I brought pens and pencils and stuff and left them in my car.
Oh, I can go get some.
All right.
I guess.
Forget, thanks.
What do you need, a pen?
Just a pen, yeah.
Hey Sandy, can you hear me okay? We're still connecting. Looks like you're muted.
Want these windows closed?
I think we're gonna open for that.
They're okay.
Yeah. Sandy, are you able to hear me?
Computer forgot.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So as of this point, I don't have any requests for public testimony.
No, we had one.
Not a formal, he's had the document, but I haven't had it. So I don't know what.
Did you see the drive?
I did, I put it in
It
there.
has the packet and it also has those policies.
So you put it in
This
this
summer.
summer.
Yeah.
Would it have my little summary piece? Alright.
I don't think I ever saw it. Open, did it?
Where would I put it? Because I think I made it in the same document.
If you,
I think what I would have called.
summer policy update,
Yeah. We can probably go back. These ones? I think so. Have that in case I need my crutch.
there you go. They look like.
So how do you open that and leave it open so you can go back and get the end open? When you open that. Oh, yeah.
There's nobody else that's joined. So we are live streaming. Do you want everybody who's watching the live stream too, or? I don't think so. I think we're okay. Quinn's planning to be here.
Here.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a minute.
Cam, whenever you are.
Okay, we can start the meeting and start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Introduction of visitors. We have from our accountant. You got Tom.
Tom.
Sorry. Tom, I'm
That's
sorry
all right.
for forgetting everything.
I'm here once a year, so.
Well, yeah, and you haven't been here like 10 years in a row yet, so then I was starting. But thank you, Tom, for coming. I actually really enjoy the audit every time. It's an enjoyable thing.
Good. I need to write this thing down.
I'm not too fan. I do that. Because we get a good one usually, so that's good. So we have that, and then do
Andrea McMillan.
you have are you speaking? Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Ben, do we have anybody online, Mr. Teeks,
There's nobody that joined the Zoom
at
meeting.
this time yet? Okay. So welcome. We have no one signed up for public comment this week. So we can, or this month, so we can move on to consent agenda. So you have board meeting minutes, district financial reports, September bills, associated student reports. I need to make a motion to amend the agenda to include an action item. And the reason why is we just had the ISBA executive board meeting this week, and they passed 2 bylaw amendments to ISBA, amendments to the bylaws, and they need sponsors to those amendments by October 1st. So we won't have another meeting to consider that. And I didn't know that, or they didn't tell us that that was a deadline. So it's kind of an emergency thing. And that's, you're allowed to amend the agenda and with an action item, and you can vote it in the same meeting if it's emergency. And so calling that an emergency because it can't be done if we don't do it now. And we didn't know about it before, so it fits the definition. So I'd like to, since I'm the one who's bringing it, I'll just go ahead and move that we amend the agenda to include bylaws from 2 bylaw from the ISBA for consideration, or action item HIJ. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All we're voting differently, aren't we? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Then it's unanimous. Sandy, can you hear us well? Make sure.
She could at the beginning.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I forgot to check in with you, so I wanted to make sure. So anyway, now we need to consider the consent agenda. If you have any questions or comments about the reports or any changes to the minutes, now would be the time for that. Okay, seeing none, if someone would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Glenn, do we have a second?
Second.
Polly seconded that. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go forward then. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Then that's passed unanimous. We did the ISBA executive board meeting online as well. And this, they didn't use this way of doing it. And you had no idea. I mean, you had a bunch of yeses, people kind of, because you can't get to your volume thing in time, you know, and some people didn't even vote. And then you get a bunch more nays and you can't tell anything, you know. So this is, it's actually a pretty good way of doing it, especially in a larger group. Okay, our first item is the district audit, which you got a copy in your packet. And Mr. Tom Luker is going to present.
Okay, so I handed out an agenda. I think we have one person online that won't have it, but it's very similar to prior years, so. I'm sure she can get a copy at some point.
I'll get her a copy.
Okay. Okay, so in there, you'll have a copy of the financial statement in PDF, so it might actually be easier to go by page numbers and scroll and whatnot than watching me thumb through here. So in general, the audit should confirm to the board that what they've seen about the district's finances throughout the year is accurate. And that's the case again for 2020. I think I pretty much say that every year. We don't really make any adjustments other than some Percy stuff. And the district staff does a really good job keeping the records accurate, so that every month when you guys are looking at all the consent agenda items and treasurer reports and anything like that, you know that that's accurate numbers, and I'm not going to come in here at the end of the year and make big adjustments and change maybe a decision that you guys should have made, or change the numbers that would maybe affect the decision. So that you can feel confident in making decisions based upon what information Marcy and the other district staff are giving you. So the audit evaluates the quality of the district or county records, confirms that the districts are complying with certain laws and regulations regarding financings. And then, as always, you can contact either me or Phil, who's the partner on the account, with any questions throughout the year. I'd much rather discuss with them while we're going through them than come in here and try and figure out stuff that happened 9 months ago. So I know Marcy emails me periodically. So even if the board has any questions, or you're getting something that doesn't look right, or you have concerns, we can always look at that and then maybe even incorporate that into our audit testing. Next thing we'll do is we'll go through kind of an overview of the financial statement packet and then discuss about some items that are in there. The management discussion and analysis is on page 6 through 12. That's kind of a, it's essentially Marcy will write that up or edit it every year. And that's kind of a layman's term. How did the district do during the year? So that's kind of a nice little summary read. The next chunk we have is on pages 14 and 15 are the basic financial statements. This is more of a business basis of accounting. The records that you guys see on a monthly basis are a cash basis, you know, what's in, what's out. Those pages 14 through 15 is a business basis, so a full accrual accounting. So all the capital assets and liabilities and everything is in there. So that's one way that we can take these financial statements and compare them to pretty much any other business in the world. On pages 25 through 43 are the notes with the financial statements. On this business basis of accounting on pages 14 through 15, we do qualify the opinion. So we don't issue an unmodified opinion. We qualify it based upon that we don't calculate the implicit rate subsidy for the healthcare. And just a quick description of what that is there's kind of this graph here. And as you get older, your health insurance costs more, so you should be paying a higher rate. But because you're in a pool, the teachers and everybody are in a pool, they play a flat rate that's kind of average for everybody. So if a teacher stays or goes on to COBRA after they retire or leave or whatever, they should pay a higher rate. But because they're still on the district's plan, they're paying the rate that they were. So that difference there is the implicit rate subsidy. And we would have to calculate that for all the teachers on here. And it's an allowed practice. The school, the Idaho State Board of Education says that we don't have to do that. It would cost a couple $1,000s to get the actuary in here and calculate that. So that is why we qualify that opinion. And we do it on all the school districts that we do. Item C is for the audit adjustments. So we make a couple audit adjustments. We recognize the liability for the Percy pension liability, so the retirement plan. And then that liability this year started at $519,000 and ended at $418,000, so they had a good investment year. Just to kind of show you how that liability can fluctuate. They shoot for a 7.05% return on investments. So if they get 6.05, that $418,000 liability can go to $1.2 million. If they get an 8.05% return, that $418,000 liability can go to a $281,000 asset. So the investment returns on Percy really dictates your proportional share of that liability. Idaho, I'll just give you some facts on Percy. Idaho is 93.79% funded as of June 2019. That's when they calculate that every year. And you guys, since your year ends on June 30, 2020, we don't have that information to use that. So we use a year those numbers.
Nothing much has changed.
Yeah, no, I'll get to that. So the average funding for all states is approximately 71%, and that's as of 2018. And there are just 7 states as of 2018 that were over 90% funded. So Idaho's at least in the top 7. I just pulled the rates for 6/30/2020. Percy got an investment rate of return of 3.1%. Obviously, they shoot for 7.05. The last couple of years, it was 8.4 and 8.7. That's why you saw that liability drop. So I can pretty much tell you right now that that liability next year is going to go up. How much? It can be a lot. I showed you that the swing, but there's really nothing that you can do about it. If the market continues to go up the rest of the year, they're not probably going to increase your rates. They already increased them back in June of 2019. That's the only way really that they would get that liability from you, is by increasing your rates. We'll switch to the second page of the agenda. The other audit adjustment that we make is for the Percy OPEB asset. The OPEB is other post-employment benefits, and this is essentially the Percy sick leave. So it's very similar to the retirement plan, but this is just for the sick leave. The sick leave, however, is overfunded at 138%, and they actually had everybody stop contributing to it for 18 months starting at the beginning of the year. So they've stopped having you pay into it for the next year and a half from the beginning of this year to help with that overfunding, because there's really no reason for them to be 138% funded. That's a asset on your books. It started out at 69,000, about basically 70,000 at the beginning of the year, and it went up to 84,000. So it's not nearly that big of a number, but that expense, I mean, you're not going to have it this next year or year and a half. Well, those are the 2 main adjustments that we make, and those only affect those first financial statements, page 14 and 15. And then while I'm talking about page 15, the best way to read that financial statement, because it looks really weird, page 14 is just a regular balance sheet. If you've seen any of those, that's pretty straightforward. But page 15 is essentially, it's the same activities, but it's essentially an income statement. The best way to read that is to look at like food services, which is about 5 up from the bottom above the total governmental. And if you kind of read across and then down, so the food service had expense of $93,000. They charged $28,000 for services. They had federal grants and other contributions of about $70,000. So on the full accrual basis, essentially $3,000 in net income for the school, food services. So you can also look at, transportation, maintenance. You can see like if school administration has no revenue, it's purely, an expense. And then towards the bottom, you have the general revenues, which is your property taxes and your other general state support and other revenues. So that's a kind of a confusing income statement, the way that we have to present it, but that's the best way to read it. So the other set of financial statements in here are the governmental accounting financial statements. We call them the fund statements. Those are on pages 16 through 24. They also get into some fiduciary and agency statements in there. But those are going to be the statements that will match more of what you see on a monthly basis.
For those ones?
16 through 24. So 16 would be the balance sheet, and then we have to do reconciliation schedules to get between the 2 financial statements. And then page 18 would be essentially the income statement. So we issue 2 separate opinions on the financial statements. As government as a whole, we do a qualified, but then for all the other pages in here, we do an unmodified opinion. So essentially a clean report on everything else. We'll come back and kind of look through some of the financial results in a minute. The other report that we do is on pages 50 through 52. That is a report on the district's compliance with financial laws and regulations. Is the district complying with all rules and everything that they have to do? That's a clean report. There's only one item that we noted on there, and that's that you put a lot of faith and a lot of responsibility on Marcy, and it wouldn't be feasible to hire another person to have the appropriate level of segregation of duties. So it's just something that we need to bring up every year, that there's a lot of responsibility put on Marcy in particular. So we've had that item noted on there for as long as I can remember. The only other non-attest service that that we do is that we compile and make this packet essentially. The last little bit here before we get into some financial results, on pages 57 through 62 is detailed information by fund. So that's probably where, if you want to go back and look at this, those pages are where you're going to want to go, because they'll list every single fund by balance sheet and by income statement. So you can see, if you want to look and see how the general fund did, you can go look at it, or if you want to see how school lunch or whatever, you can go look at those individually. All right, so some financial results. We'll go back to page 60. As soon as I get there. All right, so the general fund had a good year with about $91,000 more expenditures. There's a graph right below that shows you had some shortfalls the last couple of years. And then on page 3 of the agenda, you've got a carryover balance of about $460,000. That's about 2.6 months of expenditures. The second graph down will kind of show you where you've been bumping around the 2 to 2.7 months. We recommend 2 months at a minimum. Your revenue kind of comes in from June 30. You won't get your next bit for about 60 days. So you need to have some funds on hand just to make payments in those months. So you also, that 2 months is bare minimum. You would need extra if you had any projects coming up. So the 2.6 is by no means out of line, especially if you have projects or other things that you need to work on. Overall state funds increased about 5%. Last year, that bottom graph on number 4 kind of will illustrate how the state funds have kind of slowly increased over the last 5 years. And then on page 4 of the agenda, I think at one point I'm going to have to put a little asterisk next to 2020 because some of these are just not going to trend well going into next year. I think the ADA fall enrollment numbers dropped down, and that it was really hard to take attendance towards the end of the year. So all the numbers kind of got, skewed. And then I don't even know how you guys are doing attendance for 2020. I've heard that they just take whatever your enrollment is and not use ADA. So that's still kind of up in the air.
Yeah, so they're going to fund based on enrollment.
Okay, so I did hear that. So, I mean, but that dictates your funding levels. So funding based on enrollment is better than by ADA.
Much more stable.
Yeah. So I guess I wouldn't pay too much attention to the 2020 ADA. This forest reserve carryover is $193,000. One thing that you can look on pages 61 through 62 is everything in here is coming out to the fund balance at end of year is 0, or it's, none of these are negative fund balances. So that can tell you right there that all these grants are being run properly and you're only expending what revenue you're bringing in on those grants. So if there was some huge, balances in those, like Title 6B or anything like that, if there was some large fund balance, you'd be like, well, why aren't we spending this money? Most of those type of grants should be spent as they come in, or they're even on a reimbursement basis. So. School lunch had a good year. It had net income of $6,500, which is, I think you've had a net loss all the last 4 years. Again, this is going to be really skewed. You can see that the food costs went up quite significantly to $3.45. I don't know if that's really that accurate of a calculation. The numbers of meals served and numbers of meal days were kind of up in the air a little bit. So, but I do know that food costs did go up, but revenue followed that in larger amount, obviously, with that net income. The school lunch participation, again, that it went down, but I think you actually probably put out more meals, especially with the bus meals. So, and then on page 5, you can see the graph, which shows the negative amounts in school lunch, net losses in school lunch, and then this year was I actually had to change the graph because we haven't had a positive year in school lunch in a while. 6,500. So the federal assistance that you were getting was far outweighing the costs that you were having to do for busing for the meals. The bond redemption fund, it's got a balance of about $30,000. The remaining debt on that bond is $196,000. So you're levying amounts as you levy on that every year. School plant facility, you got to carry over about $83,000 on that for school building maintenance. And then the self-insured medical benefit pool, you got to carry over a balance of about $73,000 there. And that's actually worked out really well for the district on saving medical costs. You're essentially taking some of the profits that the insurance companies would take by doing the self-insurance. So the graph there at the bottom kind of shows the blue is the expenditures, and then the yellow is the carryover, the fund balance. So that is all I had that I was going to go through. I would be more than open to any questions or anything. One other part of this financial packet here is pages, let's see, 53 through 56, and that is a description of all the funds. So if you're kind of wondering what exactly is the Gear Up Fund or the non-ESSER and Idaho Rebound, I got to write a paragraph on that since that was a new one this year. So you can look at those and they'll give you a kind of hopefully a good synopsis of what's the purpose of that fund.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Have questions? I was thinking when you were talking about school lunch that it's kind of like a cattle producer. If you get an income year, you're like, what?
Yeah.
What?
But usually you just hope that you break even and don't,
Yeah.
lose that much.
Yeah.
So, which usually, I mean, looking at the graph, you're doing pretty good. It's just this is a nice year that you'll have a little bit extra to
Right.
do something with.
Right.
While you're looking at it, I want to thank Tom for all of his work. And again, I think important to recognize Marcy for the job that she does, kind of keeping our books in shape and keeping me in shape. And that's
Not running off to Hawaii with all this extra money she could pilfer if she wanted to. Or maybe choose somewhere other than continent or the United States, Cayman Islands or something like that. There you go.
Now, this is usually the first school district audit that I get to, and it's the first one I've presented this year. I think even as a firm we presented, so that shows. I mean, we're a tight
on top of
turnaround.
things. And
So
yeah,
Good.
I haven't really even been working on it the last week or so. could have even been sooner, it's just this was a board meeting.
Yeah.
Very pleased with the ending fund balance
Yeah.
for the year. I think that's really good news for our district and that we've been tight and careful with that. And then, I know school lunch is a much smaller kind of picture of it, but it's very nice to be in the black for once.
While the legislature was harping at us about ending balances, but they don't seem to be too much anymore.
Right. I definitely, even when they were harping a 2.6 month, like that is very reasonable and gives us some flexibility to perhaps start talking about, some maybe other needs that we have, but
I think at one time we had more like 4 months or something like that.
yeah, a while ago.
Yeah, a while ago.
Well, and you know what, when we're talking about some of those fund balances, if you pop over to page 16, it's kind of a one-page summary of all the funds. We break out some of the major ones, but of that fund balance, some of those are restricted for capital improvements, restricted for building maintenance,
Right.
restricted for, long-term debt. Of course, the general fund's not restricted, but, of your, $1.2 million of, well, no, $893,000 of fund balance, a bunch of that is spoken for.
What page did you say that was?
16.
16.
I'm on finance committee for Idaho School Board Association, and we found out this year just how important it is to have a couple months of operating money. So we wouldn't have made it, we wouldn't have survived it without it.
Right.
Well, good work. If there's no more questions, thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. And thank you, Marcy. Checks in the mail. And everyone else who contributed to all this good work. We need a motion to accept the financial audit.
I move that we approve or accept the financial audit.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Carrie moved, Quinn seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Any opposed? Any abstain? That passed unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much for
I'll
coming.
get back down to the land of the smoke.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The university sent me a message today, they're closing buildings because their filters are getting clogged
Yeah.
from particulates. So they closed, half the buildings on campus. They are already closed for the day, but they closed and sent everybody home in those buildings because they're function. Okay, next up, I'm gonna get back up here. Next up are policy updates. So we've got second readings on, we've already gone through these.
Yeah, we just deferred until, so I went through the documents,
You
but
went
these
through
were
the
the
document,
ones
yeah.
that were not kind of immediate adoption ones. I believe they were the C ones right here. The C
C
series
series.
of policies. So I don't know if you need me to go through any of them or my on all of them. I don't think there's anything. So on 2010C, there was some optional language we could look at if you want. 2210P, 2C, 14 days of closure prior to board approval, up to 14 days of closure. Anything longer than that would require board action. But everything would require board action, just to be correct, but require board approval after a 14-day closure to reopen. And then our communication plan for that. Just some change of language that students are strongly encouraged. Obviously, we also have our reopening plan itself, but this is just policy that ISBA sent out. The students would be encouraged to wear masks.
We approved the C
Oh, we didn't approve the other ones. You're right.
The ones at the beginning.
You're right. So just these first ones.
Yeah, like 2100.
Yep.
2150.
Okay, so the 21. These-
So it's the top half. And I read them out of order last time. I remember
Right.
that now. But so there's not a whole ton of policies in this, but 2100 was just because the board is responsible for remote learning or for all curriculum, that any remote learning programs should follow that process, and the board retains those it's to approve.
Oh, right. Okay.
2150 was just had to do with, especially in a digital learning environment, about, it's our same policy about unauthorized copying or of material, but with a digital component. 2210 P1 just clarified that it was a school closure for snow or weather related, to be very clear about that. 4105 and F just updates the policy for our digital meetings and the process, which we already have in place now for the board to receive input electronically. People can submit testimony basically via email to the board clerk. Those emails would be printed out with their name and would be provided for board members to read, could be read out loud. 4210 is opening the facility to community events during the pandemic. 4225 reflects the need for any equipment checked out to be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. We don't have that at this point, but if someone were to borrow our tables or chairs or football equipment or something like that. And then 5480 pulled out the leadership premium out of policy, but we're planning to pay the leadership premiums this year. And then 8170 just adds a requirement that district vehicles need to be cleaned and sanitized. And we've shut off our water fountains and we are using the low contact water sources. So I don't think there's anything particularly tricky in there.
Okay, so then these ones are these the C ones we did.
We did first and second reading and
And
approved
we
them.
approved for one calendar year. Are these the same? Are these just COVID? Is one of them
I
temporary, or-
these are not, so these would just remain in place. Yeah, the language isn't that they would necessarily always, but like, the definition of that water fountains can also be low contact water fillers. And same with net from now on, if someone were to utilize our equipment, we would require it to be sanitized before it returns back to us. Those kind of, it wouldn't necessarily go away.
What does that policy have effect on when people use our facilities, like rooms?
Yeah, so I don't think that one does. I think if we were to look at this 4210P, that they would follow these updates add provisions related to the pandemic and the expectation of following the district or school health or safety protocols. So whatever protocols we have in place, that people who utilize our facilities would follow those same protocols. And then all users of district facilities and will disinfect equipment after every use. So if 4-H were to come in or another organization that has to use that, they would be responsible for.
And would we provide disinfectant at school, or will they bring their own? Or
I don't know that that's in there. We could open up the policy. They're the summer ones. Oh yeah, I had them open already. And it was 4210. I can't see where that is. It's 4105. So here's the agreement. And it just says they have the edits highlighted. This agreement provides the district with assurance that the cooperating agency agrees to accept the additional liability risk, including but not limited to COVID-19. Form 3 is again what they pay out. That adequate supervision be provided, that physical distancing and all other federal, state, local, and district health measures must be observed. And then procedure, an event that we host at our school cannot be in conflict with the health and safety of the district or community and does not violate any federal, state, local ordinance. Agrees to follow all safety protocols outlined by the district. I think all equipment used must be thoroughly cleaned and disinfected by the user. That's probably about as clear as it gets. My thought is that the district could certainly provide disinfecting, and there's probably a cost to that, but
Yeah.
rather than the staffing cost that we would be able to provide disinfecting,
Yeah.
solution
It
or
almost makes more sense because to have people bring stuff in.
right.
Kind of
Well, and that's even bring, but even having them clean it, it might be better to have school staff. That way it's, and charge for it, because then you know it's done to the
Yeah,
proper protocol.
yeah. And whether, I mean, we don't have a huge amount of use. We're using those UV lamps, and Susan does a good job of moving them around throughout the facility to kind of disinfect the air and the surfaces that it can reach. I guess I'm not too worried about asking for reimbursement of the cleaning costs at this point. I think even if they were to kind of have some disinfecting responsibilities, we would still have Susan come in and do the job that she normally does. So
And right now, nobody's using our
Yeah,
facility, so
no.
it's kind of.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had some
sorry I didn't
people
have
have
a
asked me that question.
quicker answer to that.
Did
but-
not have an answer for it myself either. Okay. Any other things we need to highlight in these policies? Anybody have questions about any of these policies? These are all, okay, so entertain a motion then to approve the summer update policies as presented.
I move to accept this summer 2020 policy update.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Polly moved, Quinn seconded. Motion to approve the policy updates. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, we'll vote. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Then it's unanimous on that. Thank you. Okay, school reopening operations plan amendments and changes. I assume Mr. Keeks for this.
Yeah, so I don't think it'll take a long time. Generally, I would say with our school reopening plan and operations, and if Jackie wants to add anything kind of at the building level with what's happening, I think they've been, and I think I'm being honest about this, and from my feedback, they've been very well received. They seem to be being implemented with fidelity. We've had a few bumps, as we figure some things out. But generally the times and places where students are required to wear masks, and then there's lots of other times when students aren't wearing masks as well. Basically, I figured I might have some more recommendations when we came back with this, but the only thing that caught my eyes, I don't know if any of you attended the ISBA legal webinar with Anderson, Julian Hall, but the one recommendation that they had was with mask requirements is they said not to build in mask exemptions for medical, religious, or other reasons. And the attorneys feel that does create potentially more liability in that you're saying, well, masks, we've made a decision as a board to require masks in these circumstances, but we'll make exceptions for certain things. And they think that might open up more liability or an angle for someone to say, well, why didn't you, if there was a COVID case, why did you have that exemption? And so their recommendation was to remove those. At this point, our plan does have those. Yes. So there is, we allow for a religious or medical exemption. The other thing they brought up is that, if you're requiring a medical exemption, then you're requiring people to kind of bring in medical history or documentation, which could also get into, HIPAA and other health privacy protections. So that is my only recommendation at this point. I have in my notes, according to their recommendation from that webinar, was that if a person's not able to wear a mask when the board has determined it to be required at school, that they would just not be allowed on the campus then. And that the school district, depending on the situation, can certainly provide reasonable alternative accommodations. For a student on an IEP, or a student who, for either religious or medical purposes, that we might then have to provide these alternative services in another environment. If there was a medical reason that a student couldn't wear a mask, that we would have to perhaps meet them at their home or at another location where they could not be wearing that mask. Or in like sporting events where we require them in the gym, that we would provide a live stream of the video of the game to kind of just remove some of that, or clarify our policy, I guess I would say. So at this point, and all it is a recommendation from me. Certainly I want to emphasize with this plan that the authority does reside with the board. And it's very important, I think, for the community to understand that too, is that's where the legal authority is that the board gets to deliberate this and then make a decision that they feel is best for the district. But my recommendation would be to basically strip out the language that allows for that medical or religious or other exemption.
Is this affecting any or many students right now?
No students at this point. Yeah. Oh, I take that back. There are students. There's two. Yes.
Is there, so the medical exemption, is it established? How's it established?
See, some of that, their discussion was, so a doctor's note would be a medical exemption for not wearing a mask. A doctor who says, I don't believe that it's in the best health interests of this individual to wear a mask as the district prescribes.
Because they say so.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
Do we have an age exemption? Under 2 years.
So we're following the CDC guidelines, says that 3 years and younger should not be wearing masks. I think primarily their guidance is because they can't take them on and off. And you wouldn't want anyone in a situation, if you got an emergency situation where, I don't know if you've ever tried to breathe like through a wet mask. I mean, it's almost impossible. And just the ability to rescue yourself. I think that's their primary guidance for that. And that's what we would follow.
We have that.
Those recommendations. Yeah.
So that's the only amendment that you're suggesting?
That is it at this point. I don't know if any of you as board members would like to discuss any of the other plan, or if
Didn't we already pass the other
yeah,
plan?
yes, it's
Yeah.
passed.
Yeah.
I imagine probably throughout the year, and we haven't had any active cases in our building at this point, but there will certainly be more discussions about, we're in green right now, and that's the way the plan is working. I think it's working well. But I plan to leave this as an agenda item for every board meeting in case there's, we'll learn if we have to go to yellow or orange or red. We'll learn, and at each, I haven't spent the last month looking at yellow or orange or red. And when and if that happens, we'll have to kind of tackle those challenges. But
At what point do we go, say, yellow or orange, that they go to masks all the time?
yeah, so that's public health district's recommendation, and it has various things that public health district, the rate of spread, which is approximately a case a day average, or up to 2 cases a day of average is yellow. And at that point, they,
That's for the entire health district, or is that for Lewis County?
for Lewis County, not for the entire health district, yeah. And Lewis County has been very, I mean, knock on wood, but really, we're generally low cases still. Idaho County today had 14 more cases, which is big for
In one day.
yeah, 14 cases today in Idaho County. So we've, so far, Lewis County's kept it pretty low. But yeah, so that's the requirement. Yellow, I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe yellow is that masks can be required when social. So right now, masks are not necessarily required even when social distancing can't be maintained in green. We recommend them. There's one time that we require masks. It has to meet 2 requirements. The physical distance can't be maintained, and we're mixing cohorts. So the best 2 examples in our building when masks are absolutely required by district policy is in the hallways in the high school, and in the hallways in the elementary when you're like going to the bathroom, because then we're mixing groups of kids, and buses when riding the buses, because you're mixing groups of kids, because then you can't get that 6 feet, and you're mixing groups. That is when masks are absolutely required. Everything else is still optional at this point. The kid doesn't have to. But that would change in yellow to where if anybody was going to be within 6 feet, then they'd be required to wear a mask. But even in yellow, if you're sitting at your desk 6 feet away from somebody, you would not be required to wear the mask. And then at orange, orange would also be if we have a case in the building, then it says the superintendent may require masks at all times if that spread gets enough. And again, depending on the situation, if it's an outbreak in the elementary and we feel like, high school could operate differently, that could happen.
So what's the impact on you said 2 students are exempted right now? Are they covered by these?
So while there's an exemption, this would not impact them as far as like having to receive instruction outside of school. One thing that we do have in here, which is not what the CDC has recommended, but what our public health district has okayed and approved, is that face shields could be used as a replacement for the cloth mask or a medical mask. And so at this point, because face shields are an option, if a student can't wear a cloth mask over their face due to doctor's orders, they can certainly still wear that face shield. And so it would not be an impact to our reopening plan puts face shields and face masks in the same category. So I don't think it would have any impact on
Are any students choosing to wear shields instead of masks?
You see 1 or 2
Every
once in a while, but typically
they prefer the mask.
the cloth.
We ordered a lot of face shields, and I don't think we'll ever go through them now. We've got lots of face shields.
But there's teachers that use them from a distance because
Yes.
they can eat more easily.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Then I guess we need to have a motion to approve the amendment, which would be
To remove the medical and medical, religious, and other exemption. I don't even know what other would be. I haven't, but that's the language that I have in there, or that we have in there, just to remove that mask exemption.
And as of right now, as far as you know, it's not gonna change how anything's been operating for us anyway.
I don't think in the school building, it has potential to change, like at athletic events. That's probably where you're going to see it. I don't think it's going to shift anything educationally. But there is that possibility that we can see it at kind of athletic events.
Oh, I guess, yeah, so how it affects the school, but at athletic events, even like guests and stuff wouldn't be able to use that, or?
Correct. If we strip that out of the plan, yes.
Okay,
And again, the thought would be that if the board is approving the use of masks, if it's not and feels like masks need to be in place for our our safety or for everybody's safety, for the community's safety, then to put in an exemption like that, we would say you can't come onto school grounds or inside a building, because that's when it's required right now for athletic events, and participate in it, whatever it is.
Do they talk about the religious thing in the seminar you attended?
You know, I think the primary focus, I'll share that out because it's recorded, and I know the ISBA sent it out, so you can kind of watch through it too after this meeting. But they did a little bit, although it was primarily focused on the medical piece. It was just the same thing as far as clarity. Like, you can provide other services, but in a pandemic, under board, we're not advantaging any religion over the other with a face covering. We're just saying that face coverings during this time are required for safety purposes.
There's other options.
There are other options, yes. The PixLot system isn't installed, but we've been streaming every volleyball game, and we'll continue to do that until PixLot is installed, and then it'll automatically stream them for us.
Speaking of that, what about the game tonight at Kendrick? Are we gonna be able to watch that?
I don't know. Kelly was going to try to live stream it from our Facebook page, but we'll see if she got good enough internet connection to do it.
Oh, there's some-
So I move to approve the school reopening operations plan amendments.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Carrie. We have Quinn moved, second by Carrie, to approve the plan. Anybody, discussion first. Any discussion? Seeing none, anybody opposed? Anyone abstaining? And that passes unanimous. Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Is the athletics plan.
So the athletic plan, just formal approval. We made the adjustments. I think we had some more cleaning up to do, but we put our portion of it first to kind of, it left some ambiguity because it originally was the White Pine Lake plan first, which said that masks were optional, and then it went into, for volleyball, that masks are required in our gym. So that we shifted that around and just left it as an alternate White Pine Lake plan. So just bringing it to the board for formal, it was approved last time with kind of making those changes. So I just wanted you guys to see it in the packet with the changes, but I don't know if there was anything else. I actually don't think, because you guys approved it on last time, that it needs a motion.
No. We approved it with the changes last night.
Yeah.
How many schools are not making it mandatory right now?
So I know Timberline and Orfino, so the Orfino School District is requiring it. Genesee is requiring it. Moscow, who had originally canceled sports, is requiring it, and they've limited it to immediate family only in participation. Their plan also actually requires fans to wear masks when they go to other gyms as well. I don't know how they're enforcing that one. Those are the ones that I'm aware of right now that have a mask mandate. Genesee, Orfino, Timberline, Nespers. There may be others that I'm not aware of. Orfino's gone through a lot of cycles. Their plan was actually stronger than ours, if that's the right word, when it required things. And then right at the last minute before school opened, they kind of backed off and did not require masks. And then they very quickly had an outbreak. And one thing that was interesting to me from their superintendent discussing at our superintendent meeting is that while the health district has told me that wearing a mask might not necessarily impact whether or not you're quarantined or isolated, their real life experience in Orfino was that people who were exposed that were wearing masks were able to return to work or stay at work, while people who weren't wearing masks, and a lot depended on whether the person who was sick was wearing a mask, but were forced to quarantine. So he gave an example of, and the numbers might be off just a little bit here, but he had a staff member who wasn't wearing a mask that ended up in a large amount of quarantines, and a couple of staff members who were wearing masks that ended up in a very small number of people staying home. So
That's from the health district?
that was from Orfino's experience with
Yes, but I mean,
working
who's-
with the health district.
So the
So the
health,
health district, in any kind of exposure, the first call is gonna be to the health district.
Yeah.
You're gonna walk them through, what the exposure was like. Was the kid just directly coughing on someone? What's your list of people that were within 6 feet for 15 minutes? Were they wearing masks? And then that health district person is gonna walk you through, okay, these are the people that we believe need to be quarantined. They will do an outreach themselves to notify them, but then we would also notify the people that are involved. It gets a little tricky because I know, and the community might be listening too, but if you have a case, you have to communicate that out, but student privacy wise, you can't say who it was. And so you might have, it's a tough call to call someone and say, we believe that your son or daughter may have been exposed to COVID. Of course, the first question any parent is going to ask is, who was it? Because they want to help assess it, but you really can't share that information out. I can't tell you, but we're going to have to ask you to quarantine for 14 days or 10 days or whatever it is. Lots of districts are dealing with that, and they deal with it in different ways, but according to their board policies. But it's around. I know I've heard that Cottonwood, Grangeville, Orfino, Potlatch are all schools that have had to deal with it already. And, it'll come with a direct case. So I'm talking about direct cases that are inside the school. So.
Okay. Any more questions or comments on the athletics plan? Okay, next up on the agenda is policy 3085. You got a copy of it here.
Yeah. Those are those activities plan. So this is a big policy. I'll have at the next board meeting, this would be first reading for this, so not for approval. I don't have our edits in here yet as far as Title IX. Most people think of Title IX as girls in sports. That's it. Title IX is a whole lot more in federal policy and has become, it's become kind of a little bit of a political football, and as presidential administrations change and as changes happen in Congress, it gets kind of pulled in all directions. But really, Title IX is about sex and gender discrimination. And so with new guidance from the federal government, it required new steps to be implemented with Title IX, specifically regarding sexual harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. I will go through in kind of more depth next month what that all looks like. But one of the things that's a real challenge for small districts is it really requires about 5 different positions. This is great federal government stuff. 5 different titles or positions, like a Title IX coordinator and an investigator. And really, they're all supposed to be different people. So right now, we're in early conversations with other smaller districts that are nearby that we could form a basically no cost agreement for superintendents in other districts to serve as potentially, like, if there was a Title IX complaint in Highland, that I could serve as an investigator for them, or if there was a Title IX complaint here in Nez Perce, that Sarah could serve as an investigator. So those are early in conversations. One of the things is it was really kind of pushed through fairly rapidly. And so a lot of districts are still adjusting to this. The state provided some training on this mid-summer which was a really good training, but all of the feedback from superintendents has been like we had time to focus on Title IX when there's the whole school reopening plan. And so they're going to re-offer that same webinar so that I can continue to learn about a lot of the changes and make sure I fully understand them. Putting this on the policy so that you can kind of look through and like the grievance process and all of that. And then the P is the procedure. So the ISBA has done this work to put together this policy so that it matches up with what the federal government is saying. But so yeah, there's an advisor, an appeal decision maker, a complainant, which is the person who's filing it, and goes through some of the definitions, and then the process that the district will follow in case of a sexual harassment or discrimination claim like that. So in a lot of ways, the new, like in a short summary, it really does it. I do think it's an improvement in that it gives what the Department of Education has done is really tried to give an accuser and someone who is accused kind of to balance those rights so that both people have an opportunity for a fair hearing. I think in some ways it had swung to the direction of an accuser having a whole lot of rights and someone who's being accused as not having as many. And so I think it has tried to kind of swing it back a little bit towards the middle and to give equal rights to all the parties involved. But
Is this for district employees or students or both?
this is for both. So this would be employee to employee or employee to student and student complaints as well. Yeah, so in all regards.
Any other questions on it? This is first reading. So
Yeah,
will it be 40 pages long when you bring it to us next week?
pretty long.
Next month?
Yeah, probably.
Hey, I like the short summary you just gave.
Yeah.
So second reading next time.
Yes.
Next up is personnel recommendations, I believe.
Here.
And they're somewhere at the end of 40 pages. You'll find them.
Yeah. You really want to put yourself to sleep.
I read them.
Yeah.
Raylene Wemhoff, paraprofessional, Sean Teagues, cross-country coach, Amy Wilcox, school nurse, Adam Keith, assistant boys basketball coach, if needed. The others are all immediate. So entertain a motion to approve hirings and resignations, which we have none.
Excited, we should probably separate. Well, I think technically you're okay. It's up to you if you want to recuse yourself. You're not living in the same house, and there's no financial benefit to the house. But I guess I would recommend just abstaining. But excited to have. I can say that I'm excited to have Raylene. She does a great job with kids. Has a great history of working with kids. Amy Wilcox is a mom of some kids that go to school here and is a great addition to our community. I'm excited to have her, and that cross country coach is just knocking it out of the park. So.
It's the only guy that'd take the job.
We had a cross country meet. It was tons of fun. But,
Oh my gosh, the kids that watched it thought it was fun.
Yeah. it was good. Yeah, it was good. And the volleyball girls all came out and
Yeah,
cheered
they
them on.
loved
It was great. Yeah, it was hard. A lot of hills. We used our new Egg Science Center and all those things out there. So. Just the number of kids. Yeah. I think if we go, if we have enough for a team.
Next year, if we could use bales, we could have the football kids like run up and down the hill and jump over the bales.
Like that. We could have lined the course with them. That would have been easier than pounding all those posts.
Okay. If you have any questions or comments, have a motion.
I'll move to approve the hirings.
Thank you. To have a second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All opposed? No. Anybody abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. So Glenn abstains, and the rest are voting positive. Then. Next up, approve classified hourly rates, which Mr. Keith has on the board, or Mr. Keith. I looked at
Yes,
Mr. Keith's
that's okay.
name.
So this is just standard practice now. I think we started doing it last year. Just with the list of the classified employees so that the board can see that. We have a classified salary schedule. We place people on their years of experience in education when they come in new. I think last year we added a few more rungs onto the bottom. We had some people that were kind of bottomed out. So there we have added some additional rungs, but this just gives the board an opportunity to kind of see what those classified positions are paying and then approve those for the school year.
It also is at the recommendation of the auditors.
Oh, yes.
So when they come in, they can see that you've approved those hourly rates and tie in.
Okay. Is that the entire list there? Or does it go down some more?
That's it. I got them all.
Okay.
Question for you, Sean,
Yep.
on bus drivers, is that just years of experience, the difference?
It is years of experience. That's, yeah. Yep. And then we have a schedule. Do you know, Marcy, what it starts at for bus drivers? Yeah.
I can't tell you. It's fairly low.
Right.
Any other questions?
It would be an interesting future discussion. I know it's not on the agenda, but we still have not had an applicant for like an additional bus driver position.
Any
To try and-
interest? So it's not like they go
Very
and say, well,
cold.
no, they pay.
Right, that's right. But perhaps with some pay, and I know there's been other districts that have done things like a signing bonus for, you drive the first year and you get a big check or something. But at this point, no. We have one substitute. It was a good solid substitute that did not want to. We had originally thought might want to take a route, but said no to that. So
Well, I know like the list when Tim brought it in, I mean, like half the kids on there don't like bus in the morning. So
Right.
have they really had to go quite as early as he was anticipating?
I think some of them have ended up not as early, but some are still pretty early. Yeah. I don't know, Quinn, are your kids about what you would expect?
We're about
or-
normal, but it's
Yeah.
like 7 in the morning, but I know we're not the first
Right, the
ones on.
first ones, yeah. And I think still sometimes on the Central Ridge route, it's about 6:45 right now is the first kids on the bus, which is, if you think they've ate breakfast and are ready to go at 6:45, it's a pretty early morning. The afternoon routes are shorter because, some kids maybe stay for sports and have their parents pick them up or whatever else, but it's manageable and we're making it work. We're doing what we can. I'm sure these bus drivers like it. They're not getting their miles cut.
We're gonna need a motion to approve those.
I move to approve the classified hourly rates.
Thank you. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Carrie seconded that. Any discussion on the motion? And then we'll vote. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Then that's unanimous. Okay. School year calendar changes proposal.
All right, so this is probably the lengthiest piece and I think warrants some discussion. After meeting with Jackie and discussing with some of our teachers, I'm proposing a few changes to the current academic year and the schedule. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions and have the board make the decision. But currently right now, the fair runs the last full week in September. Monday, September 28th, we have already scheduled as a PD day. That went over, I think got really good reception and reviews from parents to take that Monday off after the fair because people are tired and it's been a long week. It's always a hard week for kids and for parents as well. So our teachers come in that day. It's still a professional development day. Currently, we have 2 things scheduled. We have Dr. Christy Brinkerhoff, who's presenting on some trauma-informed instruction for kids in the morning, and then also Dr. Malia McCauley, who's from LCSC, who's going to be giving a training on online learning and preparing for online learning if it's needed, and staff will be able to get some credit from that as well. So that's Monday as it is right now. My proposal would be to make Tuesday, September 29th, a professional development day or professional learning day instead of a student contact day for all grade levels. We have plenty right now. We're over plenty of minutes as far as what's required by the state of Idaho. I think there's a lot of districts ended up delaying a start, and that to give their staff some more professional development time. We didn't end up doing that, but this would give our staff a chance to kind of catch their breath. And the focus of that, as Jack and I have talked, that day would be on online learning and making sure that we are fully prepared. One of the issues, and I think it's a weakness for us right now in our plan, is that while our green, yellow, orange stuff, I think it's fairly well laid out. What we're not 100% at right now is if we were, if I got a call tomorrow morning that we're going full closure, it wouldn't like we'd be completely in the dark, but we're not fully operational with that plan yet. And to me, that Tuesday would give us a day of just staff to kind of focus at the building level, elementary and secondary, on what really it's going to look like. We still have some questions about how are we going to do assessments if we have to close? How do we test kids? Whether that's the ISAT test or the IRI or other things. Some of the ideas is to have kids still come in on Fridays and be able to manage assessment even if we're closed. What does the school day look like? How can we do a better job than we did last year? So my proposal would be that we make Monday and Tuesday professional development days, no students. And then the second part of my proposal is that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday would still be in school activities. But for the secondary building, 7 through 12, it would give us a chance to practice that online environment for 3 days. So it would be a week of secondary kids not being in the building following the fair. And the elementary kids would be in the building starting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to finish out the week. A couple of things about that, because there's a little bit of a split, like why, if it's good enough. One, I think secondary has proven to be a much easier transition to online learning and is probably more likely given their rate of spread than the elementary. So our focus right now is that if we can be successful with the secondary, then it can also show that we might be able to, temporarily go to online in the secondary and open up all of our building for the elementary so that they have some more space. And then I think that right at the secondary for online learning, we could provide something pretty comparable to what they would get in person. That's much more difficult to do in the elementary. And so that's why there's that kind of split. Secondary teachers would not be just sitting at their desks for 3 days while the kids are at home. We would run an online 3 days of experience. And the elementary would be in person. So they would be going Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We'd be practicing our online learning, and then we could take some of that feedback and learn from it. My other reason for that is just given the potential spread from an event like the Lewis County Fair, that it would honestly just give our district a little bit more wiggle room to start to see symptoms or other things that might come from that fair. So, and I do believe that it's probably the secondary kids that are the most at risk, given their kind of rate of spread is similar to adults. So for the secondary kids, they would be out on Thursday the week before, which is what we do, and then for an entire week, and with 2 weekends in there, the fair weekend and then the next weekend, before we had them back in this building. The elementary kids, we'd have a full week basically of potential exposure and monitoring for symptoms before we bring them back in. We would count those as instructional hours. They would be enrolled. You know, we wouldn't have any other loss of funding. The kids would be expected to attend school and attend in our online format as well. So that is my proposal for board discussion and decision.
Thank you. That's a really good idea, I think. But let's hear what the board thinks.
A question for you. Internet access for those. I know there was issues with that last year with some. How
Yeah,
many of those secondary kids are still gonna have that problem that's not fixed?
I think we may still it's still a potential issue. We have 5 usable inland cellular, Wi-Fi access points. We could certainly still allow kids. One thing with this, and I was talking with Jackie about it just before this board meeting, we could certainly allow kids that would be challenged internet-wise to still come in the building. Because it's not like we're closing the building to anybody to access it. So, even we were talking like, what happens if a kid just doesn't show up on Wednesday when we're supposed to go to online learning? Well, that could be a pretty quick call. Like, okay, come on in, we've got you, and we'll practice here. So I think that we could offer those kids that feel like it still might be a challenge the opportunity to still be in person. And we could put them in a room and they can do online learning from a room, a classroom.
But with less kids, you build a social distance.
Sure. Yeah. As far as like the fair and kind of seeing what's happening with the fair. Yeah, I think that number of kids is very limited. There are some, no doubt about it, but we, be able to put a kid in a room. And when I thought about that, I don't see any reason not to. I think sports teams can still get together. They would. I mean, it hasn't been announced, but on Monday when we're having that professional development day, kids would likely get together. Coaches are going to want to practice, whether it's football or volleyball. I think we've got protocols there. And again, we're not closing because we know we have a case. We're just, the intent would be to practice this and get it down and kind of iron out some of the bumps in case we have to in a live fire situation.
At the same time, just give ourselves a little buffer.
Yeah.
Just a
And maybe.
little insurance
Yeah,
policy.
that's right. It limits, even if it was just sports teams, there's some exposure, but I don't know that that's the fair. Anybody who claimed that, I don't think would be able to really back it up.
I think their fair was a month ago, so. Yeah.
Could certainly be an echo effect too of the fair, but it's hard to tell. I don't know.
I know they had a case or two at their fair.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions, comments on this possible change?
Makes sense. I guess to do a practice, have less people here. But you still have those 3 classes that are going to be here that are in it just as much. You got your 4th graders, your 5th graders, your 6th graders, some 3rd graders that will have
Done quite a bit.
everything that those secondary kids are doing. They might not be
Which is
running
a-
around
Which is a good,
afterwards.
Jackie, I don't know. I think we could manage if at the board's discretion, if we wanted to do something like just K3 in the building, or I don't know. I haven't talked to the staff about that.
No, like you said, you can spread them out more. There will be less students here, but
It's harder on parents too when you start getting those younger kids out.
Yeah.
Sure, that's another piece of it. Like, why have a kindergarten stay home unless it's absolutely necessary?
Unless there was fever or sore throat.
Yeah.
Right, those-
They could just join with older siblings.
You're right. It's a good point.
Yeah.
That some of your 3rd graders, your 4th, 5th, and 6th are.
if we pose it as a practice,
It's a practice. And some schools are doing that already. They're not going to school every day.
doing some online days. We'd rather do it after we have some training so
Sure.
they can put into practice what they're learning to do and have real students.
Well, it also helps us help those kids who don't have the internet access
Right.
figure out exactly what it's gonna
How
look like
we're
for
gonna
them if
make
it
it
gets
work out.
real. Yeah.
Yes. And we did that this spring. We had about 7 or 8 kids in and out, and it really helped them.
Okay, I think it's up to the board, though.
So really, the main action is that Tuesday would shift on our calendar for Marcy's purposes, would shift on our calendar from a student contact day to a professional. Yep.
Okay. That take away a student contact day? then?
It would, yeah. So as of now, I'm not proposing any replacement for it. It would just,
Well, it's for a good reason.
I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against it. I just,
Yeah. Well, that's
I just-
realistic.
Are we ready?
Yeah, I was just looking to see if you were gonna.
Yeah, I know. I'm good. So I move to accept the proposed calendar change.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Does
So
that
Paul,
include the online, or you just the motion to?
the motion was to, Polly made it and Carrie seconded to approve the suggested change to the
including that
calendar,
online.
which puts Tuesday as professional development without contact, no student contact day. That's the primary change. The other ones aren't going to really change anything on their calendar. They're still
Right, as
contact
far as our
days.
calendar, there's still
Yeah.
student contact days, and it would be the same number of hours that we're
Right.
currently doing.
So that'd be the motion then, just to change Tuesday on the calendar.
And then just so the board's aware that the plan is to have it online for those two.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So any discussion on the motion? If not, anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Then that'll be unanimous. Thank you. Oh, I keep on pushing the wrong button. My computer likes to do that. Right when I go look at the next thing. Okay, somebody tell me, what is the next thing?
So the combined continuous improvement plan I can talk about. So good news, the state of Idaho, this year, there's 3 sections to the combined continuous improvement plan. There's a narrative piece, there's a college and career piece, and there's a literacy piece. We receive funding for college and career and for literacy that are like line item. We have to spend them specifically on those things. Our continuous improvement plan was incredibly disrupted this year. We did not have a chance for our community meeting. The state came out and said, for your narrative piece, which is what we use to generate, we use that community meeting to generate that narrative piece. If it was approved fully last year, which ours was, that you could stick with that narrative piece for this year as kind of a break from that hard work. So my proposal would have that narrative piece stays the same for this school year, and we maintain it. And then the college career metrics and information had to be updated, and then also the literacy piece. So this is the metrics portion of it, and I finally got it done today and shared out with you.
Oh, yeah, you sent that on email.
Yes, so it's up here.
Okay.
But so all intentions are that kids will be taking ISATs and the IRI this year. This basically is a maintenance of the status quo on our goals, our benchmarks from last year and our benchmarks from this year of a 90% graduation rate. The board could edit any of these goals as far as performance targets. 75% of students meeting college ready benchmark on a college entrance exam. We use the SAT that the students will be taking. the 75% proficiency on the math ISAT. Just as a reminder, we have generally ran about 70% for the ISAT over the last several years. We don't have last year's data. So 75% is a goal for improvement on math ISAT.
We
ELA,
have last year's data?
we didn't give ISATs
Oh,
last spring,
yeah,
or
yeah.
this current
I
end of this school year's data. 75% also on the ELA ISAT. We've generally run slightly higher on ELA at about a 72% average. They want 8th and 6th grade goals, so both of those are at 75%. This is the percent that score proficient on the kindergarten spring IRI. So we set a goal. So this wouldn't be the fall one, which we are not close to. I'll talk a little bit about that later right now. But 80%, 85%, and then 90% when you get to grades 2 or 3. This isn't 100%. I think we have to be realistic at oftentimes we have kids come in grade 3 that haven't been a part of our systems and, earlier, and all of a sudden they're counting on our IRI scores. So I think those are reasonable goals. And a little bit of a narrative that's written in there about our graduation rate, etc. This is the continuous improvement measures that we'll use for college and career ready. So we are about 40% of our high school kids participate in advanced opportunities. That might be dual credit, it might be overload classes. Most of our advanced opportunities are IDLA opportunities, but not all of them. Melanie Krantz teaches a speech class that's for dual credit, and also Mr. Hartberg teaches a dual credit computer science class, but an awful lot of them are. So continuing to improve that goal that half of our high school students would advanced opportunities. This one is the industry recognized certification. I know this is kind of big in the state of Idaho. Last year I put it as 10%. I kind of feel like that's a little bit disingenuous given that we don't have industry recognized certification. I've been a proponent that in our little school district that to set up an industry recognized certification track for kids is not what I believe is the most beneficial for the students in our building. We could do that, and the board could set a goal to say we want 10% of our kids graduating with, you could pick it, a welding certificate or a culinary arts certificate or an accounting certificate or something like that. I think that does a disservice to our kids because we would limit the number of kids that could be in an ag program or in a family consumer science program or a business computer program. And so I guess in past years, we've left it at 10%. My recommendation this year would just be to tell the state that that's not the focus of what the board wants to do. If it is the focus of the board wants to do, that certainly warrants a discussion and coming up. If that was the case, I think we would, if we were to put a number there, we would want to talk. I would want the board to talk as what is the plan to head towards that industry certification, or the guidance that they would like to have happen. This is the workplace readiness assessment. 2 years ago, we had 100% of our kids pass it. Last spring, we weren't able to give it. But again, we set our goal of 100%. That workplace readiness assessment, if you've ever seen it, is really like it's like a fairly simple soft skills test. So it's like, it's not quite this bad, but it's like, is it better to show up on time to work or late? Okay, on time, click it. Those kind of questions.
Important question.
Yeah, that's right. Section 4 are the metrics that we'll use for college and career advising. We use our college and career advising money to bump up our FTE equivalent for our counselor so that she's more available. So our goal is for her to meet with 100% of the students. That doesn't always happen to review their plan. Every 8th grade student takes a college and career course and develops a 4-year plan going into high school. And the goal is to have our counselor meet with all of them every year to kind of review that plan and see what the next steps they need to do. Here's our last two most recent years of 1 year go on rate where a student went on to get went beyond high school. So some sort of post-secondary training. That can include a lot of things. Can include, like a lineman school or an electrician school. It can include obviously a community college or a 4-year college as well. And then our 2-year go on rate as well. Then these are a few things that are district level that aren't required by the state. So these are filled in. So again, this is the number of students with the college and career mentoring plan. There's a little typo. The number of learning plans developed during 8th grade, and then the percent of high school juniors who complete our career and financial literacy course. So our goal is to have every student take that econ career and financial literacy course. And the literacy ones that are specific to our district, I think this is an important one because it kind of gives us one last look at those kids coming from the IRI. So in 3rd grade is the last year they take the IRI. And then what it transitions to is more of the focus on the English language arts, 4th grade ISAT. And so our goal is to really make sure that we have those 4th graders solid as one more kind of extended year. And then we provide professional development hours to Marietta, who's our certified literacy intervention staff. And then the percent of K-3 students who fall below proficient on fall, but gain at least one performance category. So that might be a 1 is considered proficient. So it might be movement from a 3 to a 2 or 2 to a 1. And the goal is that 75% of those kids who score a 3 would move up to a 2. So they might not become proficient, but they'd be making growth. And that 75% of students who scored a 2 would move up to a 1 as well. That might be a bit of a lofty goal, but to me, that's the stretch one this year to really try and, catch those kids who are a little behind. We'll see. I think it's warrants a goal though. And then the other part, the 3rd part of the plan. So there's the narrative, there's the metrics, and then the last part is the literacy budget. So just so you can see how this money is spent, my proposal is that we continue to fund the Jumpstart program. The way that we receive this money, by the way, the literacy money is calculated on the number of 2s and 3s, so non-proficient kids that we score over the last 3 years on the fall test. So right when they're coming back. And that impacts our funds. This is what their budgeting tool tells me to expect. Every year it's pretty close. So we would fund the Jumpstart teacher. We would fund a halftime literacy aid that we would advertise for starting October 1st. That is less than halftime. And then an iStation license that we pay so that kids can get some additional support via that tool. And then we've purchased some literacy books, and some of that we overrun that cost a little bit. The district picks up the additional cost, and the literacy funds pick up the rest, or the majority of it. So those are the 3 pieces of the combined continuous improvement plan. By state law, it's a board approved document, and it needs to be posted on our website by October 1st.
Questions then, or comments on this plan? Anyone? I had a question. You mentioned percent of students who graduate with an industry recognized certification. Do we even offer any industry recognized certification?
We don't at this
point.
Yeah.
We have in the past, haven't we?
Well, are you thinking of one in particular?
Well, I remember I was thinking with Lanny Hill when he came down and we did.
Perhaps with some SolidWorks, there was some certification that I'm not aware of. In some ways, I didn't even consider this, but now thinking back, technically, we did with the NIM program. We had 2 students who finished that. And that was an industry recognized certification. That NIM program was just kind of a 1-3-year stint for those two boys. But they did get certification. They were both in the graduating class. So I should probably actually go back and edit that for this year. Well, I mean, 2 kids out of 8. It's like a quarter of our kids got an industry certification. That's great. We'll be blowing it out of the water. So I guess there is that, you know. That's my quit talking, Sean. Comes up every meeting for some reason.
Any other questions or comments? Anything you'd like to emphasize, adjust, or looks? What's our graduation rate been? Historically, it's been pretty close to 100%.
Yeah, I think so. We've had a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we had a hit with 2 students who were here kind of as freshmen and then didn't. And it dropped to like 80%. But I think the mean might not be 100%, but the mode for our school district has been 100% over the last several years.
Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, we need a motion to approve this plan it's submitted yet or not submitted?
I will submit it after the board.
I move to approve the combined continuous improvement plan.
Thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Okay, Quinn moved, Polly seconded to approve the plan as presented. And any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Anybody opposed to the motion? Any abstain? It passes unanimous then. Thank you. Thanks for your work on that.
So the next thing is just a discussion item. I'll just start. Hopefully you had a chance to read through it. I want to commend Ryan. I think he did a really nice job. Oh.
You added an agenda item.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
I had a little note here, but I ignored it.
I was
All right,
trying to
Ken,
get
you're
back
up.
to my page here.
Sorry.
I got lost. Oh, there it is. Anyway, so I'm on the ISBA executive board, and we had a meeting Friday and Saturday last week. And what we do at that meeting, we go through all the resolutions that are submitted, and then we discuss each one in detail, and we decide if the executive board is going to support or be neutral or say do not pass. And then we pick one person to represent the executive board at the convention. So our convention is not in person this year, and I'm hoping everybody will be able to, they're still working on the details of it, but basically each district will pay a registration fee, and we'll be able to go to, we can either do it here, we can do it from our home, it'll be on Zoom, and all the details of that are coming. But at that meeting, we'll present the resolutions in a business meeting, just like always. There'll be, I think there's something about only one person will be able to vote for the district. But as many of us can be, like we could be here and take place with it on the board here, or however we choose to do it. But there'll be only one person, like at a certain location, to vote the votes. But we can still split our votes and do all that if we choose to. So we do that at that meeting. And then the other thing that came up is 2 bylaws that are going to be presented to the membership. And those particular bylaws, they do a lot better if they get some support from districts. So we were asked to present these to as many of our districts as we could, and ours came up real soon since we have our meeting today. And they're also going to be presented to the other districts. The 2 bylaw changes, one is for our dues structure, and it affects our district like very little. $500 or something. But across the state, it's just to try and equalize the way the due structure is for the district or for each district in the state. And of course, whenever you try and equalize things, there's some winners and losers, you know. I have a spreadsheet if you're interested in the details of it. But for our district, it's pretty, there's very little change. Across the state, I think the main thing is that some of the like really huge districts, they're paying like $50,000 in dues. We pay $1,500 or I can't remember.
Yeah,
Something, it's not very much, but so it made some adjustments. I think the main adjustments was for the big districts and the intermediate districts, balancing in those districts. And it would be great if we could sign on as supporting that. The other one I think is, I don't know, really important. I think it's really important for our association. So we've had every vote we take at ISBA is a weighted vote. So our votes don't count for very much. 5 members of the Lewiston School District, they count pretty heavy. Every vote except for officers. So for officers, it's whoever's present at the state board meeting. We take our ballots, take it up in front, and it's just 1 per vote. So our votes, if we're there, whoever's present, that counts just as much as Ada County board member, you know. Well, what that has an effect of doing is if we have 2 candidates, and one's from a small school and one's from Nampa School District, well, we have a lot of small school people there and not very many big school people. So it just kind of naturally selects for small school people. And we've had just a large number of small school people on our executive board. So there's a vice president, a president-elect, a president, and a past president on the executive core, or the leadership group for ISBA. Well, what they came up with was the idea, and a bylaw change to reflect this, so the president-elect and the vice president are elected each year, but the president is just the, you know, president-elect from the previous year, and then the past president is the past president from the previous year. So there's 2 positions elected each year. The vice president doesn't necessarily have to go forward, or doesn't always go forward to president-elect, but there's kind of a incumbency benefit of being that vice president. So every other year, the small, there's 4 classifications. So the small and a little bigger than small group would have a candidate, and then the opposite year, the intermediate and large schools would have a candidate. And it would have the effect of basically taking away that advantage that I made a suggestion that it wasn't only school size that we voted, that was kind of political too. And I was scolded on that we don't do politics in ISBA, but that's a bunch of baloney. Because, you know, they tend to be, you know, there is a political factor there. But anyway, it would take that away, as at least a small school, large school thing. And this year, the candidate for vice president is from Boise School District, or Nancy Gregory's her name. She ran 2 years ago. And so, you know, it's not really an issue this year, but it's really an issue for our organization as we move forward. So it would be, I think, really beneficial that we do this. And those big schools, they fund a lot of our organization, but they're also really important because they do represent a lot of students and a lot of parents across the state. So those are the 2 bylaw issues. Do you have questions? Did I explain that clearly enough? Would you like to see the actual wording? I could provide that too.
On the first one, I'm just wondering, does it raise the dues a lot for like the middle-sized school districts? Like, the overall impact is.
Pull that up. I think I will. It passed unanimously, so I don't think there were very big changes. And also, it's a kind of complicated formula, but it has like an adjustment period so that no school is going to have an increase over 4% per year. So it gives some time to adjust them. I should have that, but I'm having trouble. Oh, there it is. Okay.
I'm just imagining being one of those districts and just coming in was financially underway. I wouldn't be very excited about it.
Yeah. Well, there's a like a period of time when each school is like limited as far as the impact goes. I'm not finding it. I don't know why I'm not, because I thought I saved it. In my email.
Which one would you personally rather back? The second one?
Well, of the bylaw amendments, I feel real strongly about the second one. Some people, particularly were defensive about it, that, like the officer corps, like, well, yeah, but we're good people. I know you're good people, but we, to maintain our credibility, we always have, we have 3 or 4 presidents in a row from school districts of, 1,000 and under, when we have school districts with, I don't even know how many kids there are in Nampa School District, but 30,000 or something, 20,000, and they're not ever represented. It's just a.
Why are they not represented? I guess
Well,
I don't
because
quite
we can't,
understand
because there's a disadvantage to them to be elected the way our structure is, because there's no weighted vote on electing leaders in ISBA. So you
that.
would
So I
think
mean, is it people are just not wanting to vote for the bigger?
people just
districts?
tend to vote like if there's two people up for election and one's from a school that's like your school
Mhm.
and one's from a school that you can't even comprehend, you vote for the school that's like your school. Or more like your school. So it's a bias against people from large schools kind of built in. I maintain that there's a little bit of a political bias because they tend to be, politically less conservative, more liberal from those districts, and smaller school districts tend to be more conservative. But they argued me down on that. I told them politics is in everything, but they argued me down. But I think that's some of it too.
Well, I know that you always want us to get on board with something with these, and so I'm totally game to back at least the second one. I'd be more inclined to do that than the first one.
So Ken, would this just be signing on to or listing the Nez School District as a supporter of this proposed bylaw change, which will be the whole bylaw change would be voted on at the convention? Is that?
Yeah.
And on that second one, did you say that everybody's in favor of that too, or is that more contentious?
That was 100% unanimous too. It just took more discussion to get there. Too much stuff in this email. ISBA doesn't use, a lot of times they don't use school emails because they're not a governmental thing. So I think they send it to my.
Are there bylaws on their website?
Might be.
Well, if you wanted to, Ken, we could table this, not for the meeting, and then come back to it, and we can finish with reports.
Okay, that'd
While
be
you,
good.
if you
Yeah,
want to
how
work
about do
on,
that? Thank you.
and then we
Let's
can
do that.
come back to it.
Because we just have reports left.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then you can dig and try and find them.
I will.
Okay, so the pool report. I wanted to commend Ryan. I thought he did a really nice job of putting together even including the release of fecal matter or whatever.
You know, though, I went up to swim quite often, and I've never seen the pool that clean.
Yeah,
It's just like,
it was
like
really-
getting into it was great.
It was really well kept, and it lasted the year. You know, a few years ago we had all those algae problems, and we haven't for a while. But so I don't need to go through it word by word, but you know, we didn't have any COVID-19 outbreak. We were able to keep it clean. Thought our lifeguards did a good job. We have very young lifeguards compared to a lot of years, so that was a concern of mine. But I think overall, they did very well. It is a real concern with this water safety instructor and the certification process, and something that in future times perhaps the board might consider some of the financial costs that lifeguards incur to kind of become water safety instructors. Right now we kind of made it work with basically Ryan and Nicole overseeing it. But it is probably a better experience if more people are certified in that WSI. And then the other thing I just want to bring up as we continue to talk about just kind of facilities heading into the fall. I mean, there's a couple of big things that I keep thinking about, but the pool crack, and I know in the past administrators and Tim have tried to track down this, just the kind of something to solve that dilemma, but there are cracks in that pool that are developing and growing. I don't have a full explanation for why it doesn't. I think some of it is actually air temperature, and we're losing some to evaporation. So you really start to notice it in August that the pool's emptying out. But and I don't even know where to begin. There's not a lot of like big pool companies. There's pool companies that do little kind of backyard pools. But you know, maybe it's reaching out to other local pools like Grangeville to see who they've had come in. It might mean finding someone out of state, or you know, some other type of consultant that could come in and look at the pool and kind of do that. It does add to, I think, a significant amount of heating costs when you're draining that water out constantly, and then also chemicals as well, and just the sustainability of the pool.
Do we know how those cracks happen?
I don't. I mean, just time and maybe an earthquake, or I don't know. Yeah.
I just didn't know if we could turn
Yeah.
them into insurance, or like if it was because of an earthquake.
You know, I think,
or-
yeah, I think they've been around for a while. I don't know, Marcy, how long has it been since we've been dealing with draining water? Several years, 3 or 4,
Yeah, if not longer.
if not longer. Yeah. I know there's some systems I've seen for like an actual brand, like almost putting in a liner inside a pool. That creates some other problems too, and then you have to replace the liner every so often, and it's fairly expensive, kind of liner, vinyl type liner that goes inside the pool to add another layer. But I don't know if there's any other questions. He laid out a few of the cracks that you can see. Other than that, I'll just keep moving.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I guess Jackie, you're up next.
Okay.
Whoa, never mind, I had one more discussion item. I just, not on the agenda, I'm just I'll add it in on my report, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, you can just slide down just to the pictures. That's all. I think pictures say a lot, because some of them do kind of turn out. So beginning of the year was really, really, really good to see our kids here, and they were, I think, happy to be together as well. Classrooms look a little different, a lot of spaced out. Mr. James and I went around and visited all the classrooms just to kind of see how the spacing went. Went and dug up tables and different kinds of seating as we needed. The kids are getting used to it, of course. We had a 4th grade classroom that they made their own personal face shields in a STEM project. So that was really, they enjoyed wearing those for a while. But like we said before, the face masks are a lot more comfortable and popular, but it was fun to kind of see them do something build with it. The playground we have in pods. We have recess areas for certain groups of kids. And I went out and spent noon recess with the kids today just to kind of see how it played out. And they do pretty well. They kind of know their area, know what they can do. And the kids really aren't missing anything that they didn't have before, so to speak. We had an assembly for 7/12 on the first day of school. It was, we had them all spaced out wearing masks. It's just natural for kids to want to sit next to each other and talk to each other. But we've been really happy about how the kids are responding. They're just trying to do the best they can. So they want to stay in school and they want to play their sports as well. First day of school, Liz Husted led a tie-dyeing activity for the white masks that we have. So the kids each got their own mask that they tie-dyed, and it just made it a little more personal. Then Dr. Pluskell from Cottonwood was here, and she brought an assistant with her, and they kind of talked about how COVID, how easy it is for it to be transmitted if you aren't being careful, and how the masks are helpful. And where she had her assistant all dressed up in the PPE, and why that is an important part of what they have to do at the hospital. And there was a lot of games. The ASB planned the whole first day. We had a couple of meetings on it, but it was really good for the kids to kind of run the day. All the teachers helped as well. And we spent a lot of time with procedures and protocols. And when I talked to some elementary teachers today, it's taking longer to do some things, of course, because of all the protocols and procedures we have to do. And one of those is lunchroom. We kindergarten is eating in their rooms. First and second is only on the stage, and through 6 is down below, but they're kind of in groups as well. And so those, and the same with the high school, 9-12 is up on the stage because we clean in between, and then 7th and 8th is down below. So we've added a lot of tables, a lot of spacing. So it's really been helpful there. So. State assessments, we have an iStation going on now. It's kind of being done in chunks just because it's taking longer to do some of the things we need to do. September 25th is when it's that is due. Typically we're done like a week or so before. We're hoping we will get done with that. Of course, the results aren't in yet, but we're not expecting it to be, really strong this year, but I think that's across the state as well. The core project with Greg Summers, we're continuing that a few times a month. We'll be doing an assessment called a pre-survey. We'll be doing that this week. And then preschool screening will begin when they begin. I'm not sure. I guess we'll talk about those dates later.
Yeah.
So we may, it was slated at first for the 29th of September. I think we're just going to bump it down a week pending the discussion. And then we're doing the screening because we weren't able to do it this spring. So we'll be doing a couple a day when they come in. And as of today, there's 11 preschool students, but we don't know until we advertise, who else might be out there. We're waiting on a contract with Presence Learning. I think they're inundated as everyone else is trying to get everything lined out to offer their speech services, but we're getting the room ready. Andrea will be working on helping to facilitate that. Sports, there's quite a list there. Volleyball senior night, 6 senior girls. It's amazing to see those girls play. They're doing very well, of course. Football was our military night, Friday night. If you were able to go to Highland, it was a nice way for them to work hard at honoring the military and the EMS. There's also they had 2 schools donating some metalworks, and they made over $700 on that for Wounded Warrior Project. Cross country, like Mr. Tigg said, it was a lot of fun having it here. You didn't have to go very far to watch the race. Just turn around and walk over there a little bit. And they had a good time. It was fun watching all the kids. Junior high basketball began September 2nd. They have a game on the 21st, and junior high is in full swing. And I think the first few games, they were walking in the building pretty sore. So I think they're getting a taste of football. The clubs and CT are in the mode of planning for what this COVID environment is going to do. They really don't know yet. They haven't heard. When I've talked to some advisors, they're waiting to hear. They'll see how it's going to play out. Elementary election process is beginning this week. I'll go and visit with the classes and playground zones. I already talked a little bit about that, but one of the big things they do when they come in is they wash their hands. It's just one of those protocols they're getting used to. We don't wipe all the playground equipment down every recess. They just go wash their hands. High school homecoming has been set for October 16th. As far as we know, we will hopefully be in the building, and ASB is busy planning all the dress-up days and Olympic competitions. They're thinking outside the box about not doing like two-legged races, anything where they're right next to each other. They're trying to space out a little bit more. Lots of fundraisers going on. I think the most popular has been Lions Burgers. Not a lot of out places to eat so much, so I think people are just missing those Lions Burgers. Senior citizen visit, the ASB decided we will write letters the old-fashioned way to our seniors. We do not want to mix, of course, with our seniors. So I think they're really excited about asking questions. They said they want to kind of ask them some questions and then receive some letters back. So they're excited about that activity. We've had a couple of people donate things like Kleenex and water bottles and things that we really need this year. And so we have been writing thank you notes to those people as well. And our pictures are this week, September 16th, individual and group class pictures. So we're hoping, take off your mask, don't breathe, and let's smile. So we're working on that with her. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Well, I really appreciate how hard everybody's working to make school as normal as possible.
Working on it.
Making it happen.
Making it happen.
Doing all that, plus all this extra paperwork. It's commendable.
Crazy.
So for my update, I wanted to mention really quick, Andrea's here. Andrea is doing a superintendent internship. Yep, under me this year. She's finishing up some classes. You'll be done at the end of the year. This is the last of it
Finally.
for her superintendent certification. So you might see, I'm going to make her work a little bit with this internship. That's so she may present some stuff at board meetings, and just want you guys to be aware of that. And I'm not going to make her do all my work, just half of it or whatever.
Good year to
Yeah.
have.
Just the stuff I don't want to do.
Delegate.
That's right.
I kind of didn't bother him at the beginning.
Yeah.
Getting school ready. So.
Yeah. So you'll probably see some board meetings and perhaps some presenting too and some stuff like that. The mascot update. So applications were sent out to the students early last week. We got fairly good response. They were due today. And then a notification to the Herald about some community members that might want to participate. So generally, I kind of laid out in my notes what I'm thinking. 10 students will be selected in grades 4 through 12. Kind of an emphasis, I think, on like those grade ranges of, I would say like 6th grade through maybe 10th grade, because those are the kids that are really gonna kind of own this thing very first. So junior high and high school, young high school. Plus, I've already talked to some of the 4th graders and some of their ideas. No. Yeah, awesome. That's right. We have our 2 board members appointed. I'm hoping to meet, if not next week, the week after with this committee. Obviously, if the board wants to kind of direct some other stuff, that's your guys' prerogative, but I was thinking about 4 staff members. 5 community members and alumni. We're doing it virtually, so I think there's the potential that an alumni from someone else can help as well. Not to give any one sector too much weight, I guess. So I'll send notice out for volunteers on the committee. The general process, in my mind, is that the committee kind of first meets and talks about maybe a larger list of potential mascots. That from that list of maybe less than 20, an online survey would go out to give like everybody some buy-in into what it's done. That survey wouldn't be like a popular vote, whichever one got the top vote would be selected, but that survey would just be for informational purposes for the committee. So the committee selects, maybe it's in the 10 to 20 range of some ideas, just throws it out there. Those ideas go out to the community just provides their feedback. That feedback is then used to limit it down to maybe 3 or 4 potential mascots. We would then have an artist or a design person create some renderings for us of what that might look like, what we could do with it, how a mascot might look. And then once those are returned, then the committee would make a decision based on that information. You'd have the survey, you'd have the feedback that they've gathered, and the committee would, decide on a mascot that they wanted to move forward with. And then, of course, the board would have the final say of that list. So that's my thought about that. I think over the next few weeks, we can move fairly quickly on it, and then I won't accidentally screw up with the mascot when I'm announcing the games like I did once already.
Twice.
I did, yeah, it's all fine. We can be the Indians for now. We have a plan to change. It is what it is. Yeah, that's, that's so many things. Like I've said before, the tribe has very clearly indicated that at this point that they're willing to help us with costs of changing things. Some of the things I have in mind are the banner. We know uniform wise, we're pretty good shape as far as what's absolutely required. The volleyball uniforms are the only ones that are top priority, and likely by the time we order them and get them, they're not going to be this year. But the other thing that I would like to see is some money for like out front where we now have that reader board, that we would get a nice, I'm thinking a rock that could have an engraved image of whatever mascot we have, home of the Welcome to Nestwood, school district or whatever. That would be part of that kind of overall cost. So that's mascot update. Just some reopening observations. Physical distancing is one of the most important aspects of what we do in our plan. It's absolutely the most challenging thing. It really is hard. Human nature brings us together, whether it's kids or adults or kids and adults, it doesn't matter. To me, it's firmed up my belief that, our current mask policy in green and mask policy as it increases levels is appropriate, just given what I've seen. Fire, smoke, and weather are huge challenges. That this smoke has made me aware of that. I did want to make you aware, I sent out an email to parents tonight. I visited with the health district today, Carol Morley, specifically about, so what do we do if the smoke gets really bad? And do we close the windows because then our ventilation's off? And she said, if the smoke's getting into that hazardous level, her recommendation is close the windows, that smoke has become more of a risk, actually, especially since we're in green, she said, and we have low community spread. So her recommendation was to close the windows. Well, we try to leave them open if the smoke's not too bad. We monitor that. Today we rode above 150 the whole day, which is considered unhealthy for everyone. Below 150, you can have some sporting events and you can be outside. Up above 150, we're right on that borderline. It looked like it was going to all clear out tonight. I still have a big chunk of it was going to clear out. I have my fingers crossed, but the latest forecast that came out afternoon today was that it's likely, while it's going to decline over the whole week, it's not that kind of steep push out. It's going to be a slow, slowly getting better throughout the week, maybe even in red again tomorrow, but then down to orange and yellow by the end of the week. But we'll navigate it. I didn't really ever want to cancel school. I know there were some other districts that canceled school. Do our best and balance where our kids are at, try and get them outside still some. I believe the kids are relatively safe. I really do. I think we're doing things to reduce the spread. Again, none of this is any sort of guarantee that we won't have a case. But to me, it's like, instead of, maybe 5 kids getting infected, it's 1 kid, and that 1 kid doesn't infect 5 more, he only infects 1 other. So it's a manageable thing for our medical system, and it's a manageable thing for us. That's the goal. None of this stuff, masks or anything else, is a perfect tool to prevent the spread. Really good news out of the state of Idaho. It's dropping in the state of Idaho. It still continues to drop. So things are looking good that way. A lot of medical professionals are very concerned about the flu season that's coming, though. And I have offered our school facilities to the hospital as far as potentially doing a flu clinic for the community in the gym if people want to come in and get that flu vaccine. They haven't reached back out to me yet. Just a reminder for if any parents are listening, but to the board as well, that parents have to be continually prepared for the fact that their kids might not be able to come to school for a period of time. That might be as a school decision, or it might be individual exposures too. So I think parents and our school have to be vigilant that that could happen at a moment's notice. Another observation is that athletics is possible. The kids, I've watched these volleyball girls, they're dedicated to making good choices, wearing masks on the bus as they went to Kendrick. Again, it's no guarantee, but I do believe it's worth it. The mask wearing requirement in the gym, I struggle with sometimes because I'm like, if I see some people that are sitting physically distanced 6 feet apart, and I think to myself, like, why am I making them go through that process of wearing a mask when really the physical distancing is the most important piece? But then I also see like Genesee comes and is very well attended. There's no such that you can't get 6 feet in our little gym with our bleachers. And athletic events have been very well attended. I think because there's a mindset of we don't know when this is going to be done, so I better go to every single one that I can. So it is really, again, it ties in with it's hard to maintain that physical distancing that is appropriate. And while I wish it was possible, it's just not. And the mixing of communities, I think, adds to that risk. And so I think it's worth it. And then one of our best defenses is fresh air, except for on days like today where it's all smoky. The more we can leave windows open, the better. And that keeps getting repeated. We don't have a central air system. So like Moscow, who has a central air system, they have it tuned up to pump in as much fresh air as possible. They want a new set of fresh air, a new set of outside air as much as possible in these buildings with fancy ventilation systems. That's one of the reasons why Moscow closed, is because their whole HVAC system was set up to pump in all this outside air, like force it in. Well, on a smoky day, they were twice as bad as we were today. They said their buildings were just worse than the outside air. You couldn't hardly breathe in there. And so they ended up canceling school again tomorrow. But the idea, one thing I want to prepare you for is that, we could have utility bills that are higher throughout the winter. Even in January, maybe it's not the windows wide open, but, cracked open so that some fresh air can come in. And then in the evenings when people leave, that we could open up the windows and air it out and get some more a flush of air as well. I do think those UV lamps really help. Because they are killing a lot of the air, and they run for about between 15 minutes to an hour. In a room this size, they'll run for an hour. And just the natural circulation of air, they just keep blasting all of the particles in the air. So a lot of those viral particles that are aerosolized that would be floating around get zapped. So they're actually less efficient at like zapping a surface and cleaning a tabletop, but they're going to catch all of the air as it circulates through the room. And so, like I said, Susan's been using those very effectively. Increased funding. There's a couple of things. The governor, on his Thursday press conference last week, announced that he's going to use more coronavirus relief funds from the federal government to backfill the 5% holdback. His intention, and there's still a lot of details that need to come, is that it kind of replaces that and is able to be used very flexibly. So we can use it in a lot of different ways. The problem is that it's kind of what the federal government's intention is, but also kind of not. There's a few kind of key restrictions with that money that make it very tough. One of them is that it has to be expended by December 31st, 2020, which is like, so it's really hard with staff to come up with ideas where it's like, well, Christmas is here, you're fired again, as far as sustainable. But that is a possibility. He's indicated in his speech that will be a possibility. We've had some previous coronavirus relief funds that they said don't hire staff with. But from the governor's words, without the details yet, he's indicated that would be a possibility. A couple of ideas, and then the other thing, it has to be coronavirus related, so it cannot be part of the budget approved on March, or as of March 28th, whatever the budget was. I have a couple of ideas about that. One is like the increase of paying utility bills. The other thing that I thought with negotiations, because it was negotiated that there was a flat, you know, there was no movement on the salary schedule, rather than movement on the salary schedule, which I wouldn't approve using these one-time federal monies for, is that there could be a staff bonus for those employees, for all employees, to kind of make it even, whether it was classified or certified or whatever, that could be paid out as, I wouldn't want to call it hazard pay, but for the coronavirus work that was done. And then, so that there potentially are others that will develop. Also wanted to mention the free school lunch summer feeding program is what it's kind of called, a continuation. So as of effective when school year started, school lunches and school breakfasts are free for all students until December 31st or money runs out. So we don't really know when that is. We're still encouraging people to apply for free or reduced lunch because that can affect like grants and other things. But as of now, what'll happen is Marcy hasn't charged anyone, is that right? Or and so that money that has been paid by parents would sit there until whenever that date is. I don't know how it'll be an email or a call that we say, okay, start charging all of a sudden. So we'll see how that goes.
They're waiting for guidance.
Yeah, we're still waiting for guidance on that. Yeah. Wanted to make you aware of the blended learning plan. So that was the $100,000 to kind of facilitate online or blended learning that we received from the federal government through the state of Idaho. We purchased iPad minis for kindergarten students. In the past, kindergarten just had a small set of shared iPads, but now they all have one-to-one. And also for staff. And what the staff will use those iPad minis for besides regular work is they will put them on a thing called a swivel, which is just a little robot. You put a little marker in your pocket, and wherever you walk on a video stream, the swivel will follow you around. So if we do go to online learning, it's on a little tripod, and it'll just, you know, the teacher can move across the board and write things, and it'll just be right there for kids to see. We also are purchasing headphones for every student, extra chargers that we need for iPads and Chromebooks. We ordered 50, we will order, I have not ordered yet, 50 Chromebooks. They're very, very back ordered. But again, we're in very good shape when it comes to technology, I think. Laptops for staff in the freshman class who needs laptops for one of their Microsoft Office classes. One of the cool things that I was excited about is we will purchase 15 3D printers that are fairly cheap, so that with like the SolidWorks class that Mr. Hartberg teaches, we would be able to, if we had to go to online learning, a student would be able to check out a 3D printer and bring it to their home so that they could print their projects that they're doing. There's also money built in there for an agreement with like Airbridge or Inland Cellular to provide actual internet service to families that are in need. A license for Seesaw, which we'll use to communicate with parents for grades K through 5. An MDM mobile device management software called Securely that we're implementing right now, which will help me to manage all the iPads when they're not on campus, and with security and filtering, something better than we had last year, which was free. And then also some money for PD and other kind of support for like a potential, contract with a coach to kind of help our teachers out. And then also some assistive technology for special education students that might include like something that connects wirelessly to students with hearing aids, so that we have a speaker that can then connect directly to them, especially for like mask wearing or other things like that. And so that's that blended learning plan. We also have, we continue to plan for online learning. It's one of the reasons why I want that Tuesday after the fair. I still think we have a ways to go to be fully ready and prepared. Jackie mentioned the IRI iStation fall results. I guess one quick takeaway, I know all of the results aren't in, but I don't expect our fall scores to be as high as what they were. And I think that's, we're especially seeing that with the younger students, which to me, if anything, is an indication of how important it is to have kindergartners and first graders especially here in the building and learning as much as possible. And then the last piece that I'll include, and I don't know, I wrestled around with this. I wanted to get something before the board meeting. I wrote, did you guys see the letter that I wrote to the fair board in the packet? I'm not sure. I did.
that you were going to talk about it.
Yeah, I didn't send it to Marcy, I don't think, but I wrote a letter to the Lewis County Fair Board. I have not sent it, and I honestly don't know that I will. I don't want them to feel like I'm attacking them, or I mean, I think they're doing a good job and trying their best to make sense, but it just listed a few things that I thought they might want to consider. So I just want to make you aware of that. I can give you a copy to read through. I can make a copy if you want to tonight. I haven't decided personally. I'm not asking for the board to sign on to it. It was more of a to make you guys aware, because sometimes these things can become political. I tried to really keep it as not an attack mode, but just an encouragement mode to take the best steps, because and like I kind of close with, the things we do at the school will impact the ability for the fair to be successful, and the things that they do at the fair, I think, could impact the ability for the school to be successful, to just continue to be thoughtful. And
So overall, it's not you asking them to not have the fair or anything. It's
No,
like
absolutely. I actually,
protocols and things.
I encourage them to have the fair. I think it's the absolute right thing to do. We saw what happened in Asoka County when they canceled the fair. There were an awful lot of kids that just got left holding the bag. I mean, they had costs into animals, and they were scrambling to try and even just break even and find people. I think the auction, all of the activities of the fair are really positive things for our kids and really incorporate well with our school. So it's just that, you know, as you have the fair, here are almost in a way, like, here are things that we considered as a school that you might want to consider, but not leaving it as a, if you don't, we're gonna do something. So at the end of the day, I'm not even certain I'm gonna send it, because I feel like they are working on those things, but I just wanted to make you aware.
And they've gotten those suggestions.
They've probably seen them all.
I mean, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
I know they've gotten them too, so.
Right.
But it's just one more bug
One
in their ear.
more bug in their ear, yeah.
Thank you.
And I think that's it.
I will be wearing a mask every day of the fair, because my employer requires it of me. I don't think, anyway, I'm not gonna talk anymore about that.
It is what it is.
I'd like a copy of the letter, though.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions for either Mrs. Mossman or Mr. Teagues? Okay, I apologize. I do not have a copy of the spreadsheet, but I do have a few more things to say, a little more organized, and I'll make it really quick. So regarding the due structure, our current due structure is based on enrollment and M&O, maintenance and operation budget. The new one is based only on enrollment, and it caps at 30,000 kids. So it's a per pupil fee, basically, and it caps at 30,000 kids for really big districts. Ours goes actually down, our small districts. They're wanting as many small and intermediate districts to support the bylaw change as possible, to sign on as co-sponsors and help to get it through. It really affects more the intermediate sized districts and the large districts. The resulting formula is more transparent, easier to explain and understand than the current formula, and makes, you know, minor adjustments to some districts. And it also has a period of time, transitional period of time to the new formula. I saved it. I remember now, I did the meeting in my office, and I'm not modern enough guy that I remember to save it to the cloud, you know? So I saved it to my computer down there, and that's where it's at. The second bylaw, right now, our regions, we have a large school and a small school director for each region. So it basically uses that formula for just the vice president. The
president-elect will still be elected from the old memberships. It doesn't, it's only that one office that makes, that alternates between large schools and small schools. We were audited by the we were audited by a national organization. Let me tell you who that is. National School Board Association reviewed our officer corps and found that we were underrepresented by large and extra large school districts. So this bylaw change doesn't ensure that, but it does give a better opportunity for large and extra large school districts to participate. And our president, whose name Wally Hedrick, he's a really good president. He's done a great job. He's asking for particularly sponsors for the new funding formula, but also co-sponsors for the bylaw change for elections of vice president. As many districts as possible, just to demonstrate that there's widespread support for the bylaw changes. It just makes things, particularly this convention is going to be online, so you won't quite have the interaction, and they're worried that it won't pass unless we get a fair number of co-sponsors, or that it might run into trouble, just, people don't understand it enough for whatever. And the reason I brought it to the board is because the deadline for co-sponsorships is October 1st, based on our bylaws.
So what do we have to do? Do we just support our name, or do we have to write a document?
We don't have to do anything unless, other than we have to pass a motion that we will support one or both of those bylaw changes. And again, I apologize, I don't have the actual thing for the dues, but.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, yeah.
Did you have any questions about how that might work with the officers or anything? It's pretty much like our regions are set up. So I'm a small district, and Grangeville has a member on Region 2. The gal from Lewiston moved to California, or Boise. She moved to Boise, just almost to California.
Basically.
And so the lady from Grangeville, she was the alternate. She's on now from Grangeville, so she's a large school representative. And then next, they flip it as far as which one's chair and which one's vice chair. So it's pretty much does that for the vice president in the position. Every year it flips: large, extra large, small, and intermediate.
So you just want a motion from?
It's up to you guys. I would recommend supporting both of them because they're both in the best interest of ISBA, which, because I'm on the executive board, I know more than I care about right now. And then also they're in really good interest of our group, of our school too, because they either lower our dues or keep them pretty much the same, but so it doesn't really affect our school that much. The voting thing is more for ISBA. It doesn't affect our school really at all.
You asking for a motion then?
Sure.
Okay, I move that we'll support both.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Then anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? That's unanimous. And we'll just go down as co-sponsors. The Region 2 meeting is September 30 at 6 p.m. And I'll likely ask if I can do that up here at school.
Yeah.
So you'd be welcome to attend, either in person or on Zoom. They'll send you a link on
We
Zoom.
could get
Do it on Zoom.
dinner like you normally have.
Yeah, that would be nice.
If people want to come.
It's at 6 p.m. So maybe I'll work on that arrangement with you
Okay,
and see if we can make
I
that.
have it on my calendar, so.
And they'll discuss the resolution, bylaws, also our region, and they'll have a small training session, I suppose, from the ISBA. ISBA is getting along. They're kind of challenged, Val. This down in Boise, it's much more intense, and they're all working from home except for about 2 or 3 of them that work in the office. And she's going to retire. The executive director will be retiring next spring, I guess. So they'll also be,
I didn't hear that.
yeah. And they're going to they have a committee to do a national search. They also have a deputy director who might be interested as well. They really do. They really have done a great job the last few years. Karen, when she first came on, I thought she was kind of I didn't know what kind of a job she would do. She's done a great job, and they really do work hard for schools regardless of the issue. Okay, that's all I had. Thanks a lot. Any more? That's the last agenda item. It's a pretty long meeting. It's almost a record for us these days. But thank you for your participation, and entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, vote. Let's just say all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you.